Okay, everyone. My name is Delmar Larson. I am continuing the series that we're doing for Open Ed Week this afternoon, focusing on ADAPT. Yesterday, I went through a general overview of what ADAPT was and some of the philosophy behind it. A lot of it was really topical. Now we're getting into the more nitty-gritty details that many of you may be more interested in. If you weren't able to attend the meeting yesterday, it should be posted on our YouTube channel sometime later on this week. Now, depending upon the time frame of uploading the other videos that we're doing for the session. Uh, just in case you weren't again at yesterday's presentation, I am a faculty member, a chemistry faculty member at the University of California, Davis. I'm the founder and director of the LibreTexts project, and we've been building the ADAPT homework system for the last 5 years, thanks to support from the state of California. Uh, and it's starting to grow like gangbusters, in part because there's a strong need for something like this in the community. Uh, so with that, I will jump into sharing the screen and then we can get started. Again, if anyone does not have a Libre One account, please request it via the links that's on the chat right now. And I need to find the chat because things have moved around a little bit.
We did just have Ashlyn get a brand new account. I gave her verified instructor access, but if you need to give her special adapt.
No, it comes with it now.
Okay, perfect. Then we're all good.
There's no distinction between the two, at least with an instructor account. That makes it makes our lives a lot easier. Okay, so since this is a small group of 7 people or so, how about we introduce each other here so I get a better idea about what your interests are and make sure that if I can target some of the parts of this conversation toward you. So how about, see Wayne here, which I met last year or a year and a half ago. I'll let him introduce himself.
Wayne Smith, Cal State Northridge. I have had all my materials open online for 32 years, even before MIT did it with OpenCourseWare. And I probably most of my open work now is using automated tools to do dynamic statistics quizzes where everything is built sort of individualized. This helped during the pandemic to cut down on cheating and things like that and more reliability and validity, but also it's good in general and allows me to automate things. And usually I use the R exam package, but it can be done in Python as well.
Great.
And I usually use
Ashlyn?
Canvas
Oh.
because that's a CSU kind of thing.
Mhm. Ashlyn, or Ashline, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
Yep. Sorry, it took me a second to get my mic on. Yes, you said it right, Ashlyn.
Okay.
So I am from I'm new at the St. Clair College in Ontario, previously University of Windsor, and I've been working in open for about 8 years. And now with my new position at a different institution, I was tasked with running OE week for us this week, and I'm still learning a lot about how it operates here. But I'm trying to find other avenues for engaging our faculty in open work, and also other avenues for me to use for my own teaching as well. So really exploratory purpose for this session today.
Great. Where in Ontario, St. Clair?
Windsor, we're right across
Oh,
from
you're
Detroit.
also okay. Okay. I know some people there, including a former member of our team who works with the University of Windsor, Yassine Dahi. Okay, let's move on to Sarah.
Hello, everyone. I teach for Sierra College, which is one of the California community colleges. And I have been using open educational resources for about 2 years now. And I'm here again. I've done some work in Adapt, but I feel like I have a little more brain space and I'm hoping to get a refresh so I can actually start using it myself now.
Sounds great. Neil, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Neil at Roosevelt University in Chicago. We teach like genetics and biochemistry, And hearing that Wayne Smith's got all this stuff online, I've been tasked with teaching biostatistics, so I'll be checking that out. But I similarly write like dynamic questions to prevent cheating that are generated via Python. My school uses Blackboard, so I'm trying to unlock myself from that system and move over to Adapt.
Sounds great. Wayne, if you have a URL for your material, feel free to paste it into the chat. Seems like Neil might be interested in taking a look at. Okay, Rachel, you're next on my screen.
Hello, everyone. Rachel Mastrapa. I'm at De Anza College in Cupertino, California, and I teach astronomy. And I was recently funded to write a LibreText book for the solar system, the class that I teach, along with my colleague. She's going to write a stellar astronomy. Well, write as in gather material for. I've been using Open for the last 5 years or so, but I'm relatively new to creation, adapting, remixing, all that fun stuff. But especially with LibreText, I really want to look into Adapt at the same time to consider that for my own courses and course design so that I can just do everything at once.
Great. De Anza is where the author that created the OpenStax astronomy book is, right?
Foothill, our
Foothill.
sister college.
Right. Okay. Great. Stacy, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm a OER librarian champion at Ohio Wesleyan University near Columbus, Ohio. I work with faculty, or I'm trying to work with faculty to get them excited about OERs. And one of the veins that I've seen the most interest lately is in the ancillary materials like problem sets and practicing and testing.
Yeah, definitely. Things have evolved a little bit, although there's still a lot that needs to be done in textbooks. Is it cold over there right now?
Not for us, it's 45.
Okay. Okay,
Fahrenheit.
well, yeah, that's a relative thing. Okay, going from one cold place to another, Anne is here.
Hi, everyone. Anne DeCare in Denver, Colorado at Metropolitan State University of Denver, where it is cold today. And I teach nutrition classes and have had a book on LibreText for about 5 years. So really kind of exploring Adapt, but honestly, a little concerned about cost for students.
It's understandable, and I'm happy to discuss that after we go through the topics that we're doing today. Okay, so thank you all for introducing yourself again. This is not planned to take the full hour, but I'm certainly have this scheduled, and it's nice to know who I'm chatting with. So the first thing is something I mentioned yesterday, and if you weren't there yesterday, this is potentially new. With the account that you have, the LibreOne account gives you access to the LibreVerse, which is a courseware, a set of technologies in order to advance the goal of taking the place of commercial publishers from the classroom. And that right there means more than just textbooks, but ancillary materials, including homework, question banks, slide decks, now AI, computational capabilities like Jupyter, interactives, and videos, et cetera, et cetera. In order to be able to address that, we need to be able to have an alternative that handles the full scope of what commercial publishers put out. And that's why we've constructed the LibreVerse, which initially is a very daunting infrastructure to be exposed to, but the key point is to divide and conquer and identify the things that are most important for you. And the point of this conversation is dealing with Adapt. So anytime you see a rocket ship anywhere in the LibreVerse, you can go to the Launchpad that gives you access to all the parts of the LibreVerse that I mentioned. You can alternatively go to launchpad.libretext.org, which I can paste into the chat right now. And that right there gets to the same source. So if you are parsing around on the Libraverse and you get stuck or you get lost and you don't know where you're at, just click on the rocket ship. It goes to here, and then it gives you the opportunity to go wherever you're at. But we're focusing on Adapt. So I'm going to click on Adapt, and I already have it open here. And this right here is a demo account for me, which is completely blank. And I presume most of you have the same situation when you've logged into Adapt. I'm going to assume that everyone in here has logged into Adapt and is able to follow along with what I'm doing. If you haven't done so, please register for or log in or register for an account. Raise your hand so I'm actually aware of it, and I can actually delay things for a few moments for you to actually get on board with things. So the point of Adapt was to build a homework system that we had control over, and that we're able to both expand it to the scopes of what we wanted to be able to do, but also to be able to take Adapt and hand the assessment infrastructure and fold it into the other parts of the LibreTexts. In other words, deal with the synergy that we want to be able to create instead of all just individual applications that don't talk to each other very well or at all. So for example, I can imagine making a textbook and wanting to embed questions, interactive questions into the textbook. Now you can do that already with H5P that's stored in the studio. This is akin to what Pressbooks does, although they charge for what they do. And you can embed it into the textbook, and your textbook then becomes an infrastructure for homework if it's embedded summatively, or for practice if it's embedded formatively. But the key point is that you're mixing in different modalities into something a little bit more unique, more interesting, more engaging, and a greater capabilities for learning. So we've constructed Adapt. I've already have it open here. And the point of Adapt is to be one of two things. One is as a question bank for faculty. So if we can combine all the various little question banks, OER, open source question banks at various places, bring it all together into a single repository. It makes it easier for us to be able to find new questions, make our lives better when we actually, or at least easier when we're building questions for our exams, but also to help facilitate uh, distribution of stuff that's been created. In other words, capitalizing on the sharing is caring model. And instead of having lots of little mini repositories, bring it together so it's actually useful out there. That's as a question bank. And any faculty member who has a Libre One account has access to the question bank and Adapt. Adapt also works as a homework platform, an infrastructure such that students can submit scores. Those scores may be auto-graded, may be human-graded. The scores can be passed back to your learning management system so you can do what you need to do with your LMS. You can do learning analytics in order to identify what students have mastered or not mastered in order to guide your pedagogy or guide the questions that the students need to be able to do, or potentially do more advanced things like adaptive learning infrastructure, or I mentioned yesterday a phone app where you have the ability in order to use Adapt to take the place of in-class polling infrastructure. So you can download it to your phone and then ask questions and interact with students in that way there. And I'm happy to talk about any of those things, but the point of this conversation is to address the first level, which is how to build courses. Now, it's actually two aspects: how to find and embed existing courses, and then how to build courses. Then we're going to be talking about how to actually build assignments into the courses in order to be able to move on. But this is going to be relatively straightforward in the application that's there. So I've logged into Adapt. Again, I have no courses right here. And what you'll notice is that I have two buttons right here. I have new courses and I have import courses. Those are basically the two aspects that I was talking about that we have available here. Uh, while we're at it, I'll talk about a few other things here. One is this button that says support. If you click on this, this will open up the support ticket line that you can use to request information. You have a problem with something, your students have a problem with something, they can actually submit this to our ticket lines. And then the LibreText development team as a community reviews, as a little mini community, reviews the tickets and tries to address them as fast as we can. It also gives you access to what we call Insight. Insight is a computerized repository of answers to questions like a FAQ, and other small widgets and things that are important for that. That's going to be more important when we talk about constructing questions, I'm not entirely sure we have that on the schedule here, because discussing questions can be a very time-consuming process, at least the more advanced types of questions that are algorithmic and computational, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, the other one is the dashboard. If you go to the dashboard, you have 9 entries here. The top 4 are the ones that are associated with me, my courses, my questions, my learning trees, and my assignment templates. And the bottom 5 are the ones that are more of the community. I can do a search through the question corpus. I can browse learning trees, which will be a topic of discussion on Friday. I can look at all public courses. A course doesn't have to be public, it could be private, meaning that only the students and the instructor has access and knows about it existing, with the exception of the development team. The commons are the courses that we have curated as a development team for you to be able to have access to. So this is akin to the way the the way the libraries are organized, with campus bookstores and it's campus bookshelves and central bookshelves. But in this case here, we use slightly different nomenclature for that. And then we have frameworks, which gives an opportunity in order to construct learning objective frameworks that you can use as a consistent mechanism to align questions to, that then becomes, it makes things easier for you to do learning analytics that's out there. So I encourage you to peruse through these things as you see fit. We're going to be accessing these two. And when we start talking about adding questions to assignments, then we'll start going to the actual question infrastructure that's out there. And again, if we have time after I go through these things, I'm happy in order to go through any of the other aspects that I wasn't planning on doing today. So here's the gist. We have an empty blanket to start with, and I just want to be able to import an existing course. So the 2 skills I want to be able to do are relatively simple today: import an existing course or build a new course. And if we have time, we might try to build assignments, but depends on things. So in that case there, let's do the easiest one first, which is to import an existing course. So the idea behind ADAPT is the underlying application of sharing is caring. And that right there is how I describe OER in general, and certainly open source technologies even more broadly. So if you create a course with questions that you brought in or questions that you curated, you make it public and you provide the opportunity for someone else somewhere in another state to be able to grab it, for example, and use it for their purposes. So if I click on importing course, all I need to know is some details associated with them. So I can actually write a name for a course. If I just write down chemistry or chem, I can look through all the ones that are public that have the title chem in it. Now this could be a long list. And no doubt this is going to be so obscenely long in the near future that we need to make a different mechanism in order to parse through that. But right now, this works reasonably well for I think we have somewhere in the order of about 1,500 courses that are going on, and about an average of 800 courses per term right now. New courses that are being generated. So this is going to be growing uncontrollably in the near future. But anyways, I can parse through here and I can say, well, what type of course do I actually want to work? Do I want to do something like a Cal State University San Bernardino and take Larry Mink's general chemistry course that was done in 2024? Or do I want to take David Cow's course that is Chem 1 and such like that. If I parse through any of them, let's say I did take Larry Mink's course, I can then bring in the entire course with clicking this button. I do have an option in order to use the existing release dates. Those are the dates when assignments were due and when assignments were opened up, and even when assignments were visible to students. That's not going to be so useful for me because that was back in 2024. So I'm going to have to go through each assignment in order to be able to update it. Now I know Larry's assignments, Larry has 15 assignments for his course. So it's really not that big of a deal for me to individually do it across the board. But if I had something like 30 or 40 assignments, I don't want to go through an assignment after assignment, changing all the dates and times. So I have the ability in order to clear all the existing dates. And that, I think, syncs things up to the new date. The new date structure shifts it around, but I will know more about that after I click some buttons. So I'm going to click this thing. I wait a moment. It's going to create a course. The course will have a bunch of properties associated with how it's used, and then it will have assignments, and assignments will have questions that are embedded into it. So I'm going to kill this modal. Here is the course. I'm going to click on here. Here are the assignments. I can click on one of the assignments and say, here are the questions that are there. So the basic structure that we have for courses are course, assignment, questions. That's the approach that we go about doing it. If you just remember that you have that 3-level structure, it helps to be able to identify what you're looking at when you go about doing these things. Now, each of those levels has some metadata or use associated with that. Yeah. So I'm just going to dissect this course. And actually, let me a second moment. I'd like everyone, since this is meant to be hands-on and we have the time we're doing, import a course. If it's not the course that you want, your favorite course, or that doesn't exist, that's fine. I just want you to be able to bring in one course into your Adapt account so we can actually work with this. And I will pause for a moment, wait for some thumbs up that tells me you've done it or that you don't want to do it, and I know that we can actually move on from there. Thank you, Rachel. Anne has her thumbs up.
Delmar, if it's a course that says Commons Instructor, can you describe what that means?
So the Commons is the account that's meant for let's say special courses that are curated by the development team.
Okay, thank you.
Commons may not be entirely the best term for it. We might think about a different term in order to describe that. But in contrast to the public courses, which is anybody, anywhere that makes a course public, this is the one that only the development team is responsible for. And you can think of it sometimes as canonical courses. It's not necessarily any better than someone else's courses that has been put in place. But for example, if we brought in the questions from OpenStax, go through the questions, we update them, we introduce good solutions, pedagogically useful solutions, et cetera, and then we have a canonical set of questions set up in assignments that are correlated to chapters and then such like that. But no one in their right mind would use all questions in the OpenStax book because there's, at least in chemistry, there's 1,700 questions for it. And that would be exceedingly abusive to the students. If you're doing it in physics classes, for all 3 volumes of it, it's 4,500 questions for students to tap into, and no one would ever use that. But right now, we're just dealing with bringing in a solution, bringing in a course. What we will be talking about at some point is then doing the same thing, but at the assignment level of an existing course. You don't have to bring in everything. So I think everyone has their thumbs up. Ashlyn actually has a cooler hand signal than the thumbs up. I got to learn how to go about doing that. So let's talk about a couple things associated with this course. The first thing that you'll notice is that you have a red hue. I'm going to go back to the course. This is a set of breadcrumbs. So here's my course. Now I have a red hue. The red hue is basically the same as unpublished or a status for being unpublished, like it were in Canvas, if you're familiar with Canvas, and I'm sure other LMSs have something similar. So in other words, students will never see this course existing at all. Even if they're enrolled in it, they won't see it as long as it's red. And if I turn it on, in this case here, it is now viewable if a student were enrolled. But if you're not a student that's enrolled in the class, you're obviously not going to see this, and nobody's going to know that this course exists, with the exception of us, the development team, who's able to keep track of everything. So if I were to, and this is relatively straightforward, telling you what term it's associated, and it has some action items connected to here. Most of the table forms of things will have action items in order to be able to deal with this. This right here will open up the grade book, which is going to be nothing. Oh, actually, it does. It introduces all the assignments, but it doesn't have any students enrolled in it, so it's just basically a top level. Then you have properties, which I'm going to go through momentarily. I have the ability with this thing here to clone the course. You'll also see that for assignments and for questions. So I could basically take this entire course and duplicate it by pressing this down. That pop-up is a little annoying there. And then it basically duplicates it, and there we go. So I can also trash this, and it wants to get confirmation in order to make sure that you know that you are indeed destroying a course. And I have done it this way. So fine. I've made it so this course is viewable. I go in the course. Remember, I have courses, assignments, questions. So here are the assignments. And like I said, there are 15 assignments. There are a few surveys associated with getting some information regarding the grant that Larry Meek had. And you'll notice that they're all red, and they come in with red, which means they come in not being viewable for the students. And I can click on any of them in order to see the questions that are there. I'll have more discussion about assignments at a later time. But we're talking about building courses, the top level. And at the top level, you have the ability in order to add assignments, which we're not going to do, or import assignments. This is very similar to how we did it with the course level. I can look at the course gradebook manually here, and I can do course properties. And course properties are actually what I care about discussing here. So each of the 3 levels has some metadata connected to what you're talking about. The metadata connecting to the course properties are how we actually building the course. And this is what's going to take a bit of time for our conversation. And it's going to be the same thing that we're going to be doing whenever we want to recreate the course. In fact, maybe it's better for me to do this at a new course level rather than looking at an existing course. So let's not do that, and let's take a step back and say, okay, look, well, what have we done? We've created one course. Let's make a new course from scratch. So I'm going to make a new course, and it pops up a modal. This is asking for the metadata that describes that course, how that course is going to be used, and such. This is relatively simple to start out with, but then there are more advanced features associated with the course that's useful in order to take a look at once it's created. So the first thing to do is to have a school associated with that. This should be at some point related to only the school that you have connected to your LibreOne account, but it's not set up like that yet, or if it is, it's only set up on your side and not my side. But in this case here, I'm going to pick a school that I want. So if I did metropolitan, and there are lots of metropolitan areas, metropolitans, is there a difference, Anne, between these two?
Yeah, ours is obviously in Denver. The other one is in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I indicate the campus that I'm at. This is important in order to get right, because if you want to hook up your ADAPT course to your learning management course, it uses this in order to know which LMS it's connected to. And if you pick a course that doesn't have an LMS connected to it, you're not going to be able to pass any scores back. In this case here, everything that is asterisk are things that are important, that are necessary. So in this case here, I'm going to say Introduction to ADAPT as the course title. I then want to pick the discipline. This is useful for other people to be able to find your course. So that when you could do a search and say, I only want to look at chemistry courses, I can do that instead of going through hundreds and actually now 1,000+ courses in order to do so. I'm going to make this into a financial accounting course. I have the option of making a public description. This is the coolest course around. And like that. And my private description, pass this course or you will fail life. Okay, so I'm being a little brutal there, but this is only for me or for other instructors that are able to see it. Students don't see it. Students will see the public description associated with your course. If you want and you have a textbook that is open source or OER, like a LibreText book, or as Wayne put into the link, ourexams.org, you can paste that there. That's just coming along for a ride. It has no functional aspect in terms of how we use adapt, but it's just convenient in order to be able to say this book is connected to this textbook in the way we use it. Now comes something that's required, which is the modality. What do we want this course to be? And there are three options on here. And this is the first time that I want to talk about these question marks. If you hover over these question marks, it'll introduce what's called the tooltip, which is this little mini pop-up, technically better described as a modal that comes up that you're able to get more information regarding these things. So you could talk about these different aspects because you're probably not familiar with what these things mean. Now, traditional is the standard way that you're going to be using this thing, that's using it summatively. Only the students that have access to the course will be able to see the assignments and the questions and the due dates and things like that. It's standard process. However, you may be interested in building a course that you want other people to use that are not registered for that course. We call those formative courses. And that may be, for example, that you're going to be giving a presentation, or you want to show somebody some of the questions that they can then interact with. We make that then informative, so you can actually access it without having to have an account. It's very convenient for public presentations and things like that. The last one is anonymous. This is a little bit more unique in the way it's set up here. If you click on this link, it makes it possible for students to see the questions, but not to see the answers, nor to be able to access the auto-graded capabilities. Now, you may be wondering why we have something like that here, because it's a peculiar way in order to go about doing it. The reason that we have that there is there are needs at times, depending upon the licensing of the material, that we want to be able to provide people access to see the questions themselves. In other words, in some interpretations of non-commercial clauses on open licensing, we interpret as meaning that we want to be able to share the content so people can access it, but not the solutions and not the being able to auto-grade it there. So you don't need to press anonymous. You rarely will use it. Most people use traditional because that's the standard way in doing it. Okay, now comes a few details, and we've been planning on removing these for a while, and we probably will sometime before the end of summer. One is the section. If you have only one section in your class, you type in one, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. If you have multiple sections and you want to name those sections for one reason or another, for example, when I teach my general chemistry class at UC Davis, I have 16 sections in my large general chemistry class. Each section is connected to a specific lab and specific discussion time for TAs in order to be able to process this. But they're all part of the same class. And I want to be able to organize them, control them in the same way. But I may at one point or another want to be able to assign different dates and times to different sections because they meet at different times off of that. And so it just gives you more nuanced control. But if you're in a class, if you're in a campus that you're just teaching one class of these things and you want them to be individual, well, there's only one there, you can write down anything you want. It doesn't matter. That's just a descriptor. Sarah, you have your hand up?
I do, thank you. So I heard you say that you've been talking about removing it. I don't see that in mine.
Okay.
I go from modality straight to term. Is that kind of what I should expect, or did I do something wrong?
Well, that's interesting. Do other people not have that?
Yeah, I'm with Sarah.
Okay, maybe they did that and I see this because I'm an administrator. So maybe my programmer did do what I asked him to do and I just didn't do it. But Rachel does have section and CRN. So I am a little perplexed about why you have one versus the other. Anyways, don't worry about it.
Just to clarify, if I did have multiple sections, would they all be filtered into the same thing?
No, so you have a way in order to handle it
Okay.
once the course is made.
Got it. Thank you.
So the reason I wanted to remove it is it's not necessary for you to actually know it at the point that you create the course. So I wanted to make things a little bit simpler for people. But in this case here, I just type 1 and 1. The course registration number is unique number associated with that course, that instance, that section out there. That's convenient if you want to upload your scores directly to your LMS or to banner or whatever infrastructure that handles your grades. I need that when I upload my scores manually because I don't go through my learning management system because I actually don't like my learning management system. It's not that I dislike Canvas, I just dislike all learning management systems because they are painful. That being said, Adapt is essentially a learning management system, but let's ignore that aspect. Now I have terms. Right now, this is free range, so I can say this is a summer of 69, and then I can channel my inner Brian Adams song. Um, we're probably going to set this thing up so it's a little bit more structured. So you pick the term and you pick the dates, and then it's all set up instead of having it more free range. We need the start date. So I'm going to start today, and I'm going to end in 2 weeks. Then comes these last final questions. One is public, and this is if I want other people to be able to see this course exists. So it's basically public versus private, and that's probably a better phrase here than yes and no, to be honest. Lastly, it has alpha and beta, or alpha course. I want to postpone that conversation for now, and I want to come back to it a little bit later on when I talk about why Adapt is designed the way it is, because it has some really powerful features, but you have to understand that there's some thinking behind why we made things a little complicated, and that will make more sense. And lastly, will be an option here that says if your campus is already set up with an LMS, meaning that you can pass grades back to your LMS, you'll have an option in order to make this an LMS enabled course or not. In this case here, Metropolitan State University of Denver is not hooked up with us. That has to be a manual decision that the LMS administrator decides on doing. So we are basically unable to operate as an LMS enabled course. So we can operate only as a uncoupled course. We can then download the scores from the gradebook for CSVs in a CSV format, and then we can upload it manually if we want. We just don't have the automatic communication that LTI provides to us, or LTI plus an API for the Canvas site. Okay, so again, keep alpha for no for now. If I've done everything right, when I press save, it will make a course. If I've done something wrong, it will stop and tell me I've done something wrong. And I've done everything right. So I like everyone to create a course using some of the parameters I do, or you make any other unique parameters off there, but I need you to have an empty course for us to be able to work with. And then feel free to give me a thumb or a what, Ashlyn, that's a Hawaiian symbol originally, right? And that's the A-OK, but they have a certain name for that term. I don't know what that hand signal. Does anyone know what it is?
I actually do not know.
Shaka. That's, oh no, okay, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Okay. I was thinking Shaka, and really there may not be a name for this thing. The OK gesture. Okay, I'll leave it with that. I'm sure the Shaka is on there too, if you look closely. Sarah has a course. That has it, yeah, an empty course. Neil's cool. Rachel's cool. Stacy's watching and learning. And thumbs up, Swain's up. Okay, so I think we got everybody here, except for Ashlyn. Oh, you had, okay, there we go. Now we have a thumb. Okay, so let's go into here. So again, it's red, which means that it's unpublished. I can publish it right here and give some instructions off of here. And I click on here and it looks empty. So it's very similar to what I pulled together when I imported the course, that is, except it doesn't have any assignments. Making assignments will be tomorrow or Wednesday. I think it's tomorrow's discussion. But this is what we have. So I want to actually go into the course properties. So I'm going to click on the course properties, and this is has a lot to do with how the course is being used and the metadata that we used in order to create the course. So when you do the course properties, it has this entry here, and this should look identical to what you saw before because it is identical to what you had before. So it gives you the opportunity that if you didn't like it in the way that you wanted to be able to do it, and you want to modify any of these things, feel free to modify it. It doesn't hurt anybody in order to be able to do this. So at this point, I want to talk about alpha. And alpha is a very peculiar name that we used in order to take the place of master. In other words, instead of master slave, we talk about alpha and beta. And the idea behind here is that this is a community project. So we want to build an infrastructure so someone can create a primary course or an alpha course, and then have secondary courses that are tethered to the alpha course. So when the alpha course changes things, the beta course can benefit from it. That's convenient if you have a whole lot of classes that you're teaching and you want to teach them in an identical fashion. You can then have an alpha course that you tweak and then you import it and you move it off there. It's convenient if you have different instructors that are teaching the same class and they want to be able to import it. And instead of making a copy of the original course that they import, it gives you the ability to tether so you can update and fix things, and then everyone can benefit from that. So for most purposes, you don't need to have this as an alpha course. It's just basically a course. But when you pick it as an alpha course, you're then giving permission for someone to beta tethered to your course so that they can see what your course after you tweak it. They don't see the students that are involved in the course. They don't see any grade books connected to it. No FERPA protected information, but just basically the structure of the course in order to be able to do that. And we find that this is useful in many campuses that have a large pool of adjuncts that they're using in order to coordinate what the adjuncts are teaching and give them the greatest utility possible that's there. So that's a little bit more unique than what many other systems put together, and it has a few complexities behind it, but this is not the right time in order to discuss it. What I want to talk about are these course properties right here. So these are the properties associated with the course once we've constructed it, and they're associated with how we use the course, and they're associated with how we can take advantage of how students use the course. So this is the general information. The next one is sections, and this was the question that I think Sarah might have asked, meaning that you have the ability in order to add more sections to the course. So I can come in and say, I want section 2, and I want section 3. Actually, I can't spell 3. And then submit, and et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see the section title, the course registration number that's necessary. It has an access code, and I'm going to talk about accesses in a moment. And then it has some action items, typically to edit, to refresh, which resets the access code, or to trash it. You always need at least one section in your course. You can't operate without a section. And such. So at this point, it's worthwhile to talk about how students can access your course. And there are actually 3 ways in which students can access your course. Now, the first thing to mention is that students cannot access your course unless they have an account. Flat phone. So what we used to have is we used to have students create accounts using access codes. So we give them these access code, and then they can come and create an account. And let's just take a step back here. They're able to create accounts without an access code, but they're able to enroll into your course only when they have the access code. Each section has its own unique access code because each section typically has its own roster associated with it, and you need to be able to sort the students into the appropriate sections that you have. So that's fine and dandy. We still have that option available. However, we started to make things a little bit more flexible in different ways. So the first one is if the course that you create is coupled to an LMS, then it will take the roster from the LMS automatically. And when students try to access the course in the LMS, access ADAPT through the LMS, it will automatically create the account and pass them into the course. So in other words, it's easy peasy, no issues at all. You don't need to worry about it. It's automatic, and there you go. And many courses are LMS enabled courses. But obviously, if the course is not an LMS enabled course, it's not able to get a roster from your LMS, and you need to have some other mechanism in order to be able to address that. So I'm going to switch down here to students, and I'll go to graders momentarily, but that's probably not so big of a deal for you guys. I can come in and basically, if I give a list of email addresses or individual email addresses, I can invite students. They will get an email that says, here's an access code that's special to them, to the email address that you've given to him, and then you can and they can click on it and get their account automatically. It makes life a lot easier for that. And I recommend people doing that as the primary mechanism. There's another mechanism that is the section mechanism that if you give the access code here, anybody who has the access code can register. Whereas in the student-based access code, it's only that student with that email address that's able to register. So this has more protections for abuse. Now, I shouldn't really say abuse, but for misuse. So one of the scenarios that we had experienced and it's plagued us for multiple years is that when we were used to use this as a primary mechanism for registering for a class, that the students would register for a class with their campus email address. And then they forgot they did that. And then they'll register with their Yahoo email address and their Google email address. We had one student that registered 5 different times with 5 different accounts, all in my course. And then they don't know which account they used in order to do the problems, and they want to somehow integrate all their problems, all their performances of five students into one student at some later date, which we're not able to do. It's just it's not infeasible, but it's not something we want to build because we don't ever want to have that scenario. So by switching to individual emails that we send out to people provides us greater security in terms of how we operate. Plus, it appropriates an account automatically for them when they actually try to register and use that account. So there's less complexities associated with those things. Those are the 2 mechanisms that I suggest people do. Again, to reiterate, if you have an LMS enabled course, it gets the roster from Canvas or from your LMS. If you have it not an LMS course, you can then upload your roster of email addresses and it will send invitations to students in order to be able to register for that class. That each student will have their own unique ID number in order to register. Okay. If you have graders, whether they're instructor level graders or they are student level graders, TAs that we have, you can invite them to the class in right here, and then they'll have access to grading, and you can select how you want them to be involved in the grading in different ways. At UC Davis, I have a lot of TAs for my classes, especially when I have the 16-unit class. So I'll have 8 to 9 TAs I need to be able to handle and navigate and make sure they're on track of things and that they grade things on an appropriate fashion. There's a question here that Sarah asked. I chose LMS. How do I link them? Will we learn today? Sarah, you're Sierra, so you are already linked. I can't show you because I don't have it hooked into my campus, but I have a video that will show you how to do it. So I can give you a link in order to do that. It is super simple. You
Okay,
just press
thanks.
one button and make it work.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So take care, Ashlyn. Hopefully I'll see you later on. If not, feel free to contact me with any questions. Okay, so now comes something a little bit more complicated. And you don't need to do this if you don't want to, and that's our auto release. The idea behind auto release, and this is better for me to actually show you my course. So this is my general chemistry course. And this is what it looks like when I actually have multiple assignments in the course. So I have all these things in together, and I have 3 types of dates associated with every assignment. I have one where it says release. That's when students can see the assignment. So if I were to make it on auto, they will see the assignment at one specific time. Then I have the available on, which is when students can start doing problems in the assignment. And then I have the due date when students have to submit for that. When I talk about building assignments later on, there's oftentimes a second due date if you want to have students submit late scores. That is not reflected here, but is reflected when you actually go into it. The auto release will handle this date right here for us automatically. Now that by itself doesn't sound overly impressive, but what is impressive is what I can do with the actual assignment at a later date. So after the due date, I may want to be able to release the scores. So I can decide when I want to release the scores for the class. Now, if they're auto-graded, then there's no issues for me. It's released at some point afterwards. I set it up via the auto release option right here to be on the order of where are we? I think I do it 12 hours yeah, after the due date. And so I give them 12 hours because I want to be able to deal with situations when students have issues and they're unable to submit on time, but I don't want the solutions be released before they actually submit that. Anyways, I digress. The key point is I can decide when I want to release the scores, when I want to release the solutions, and when I want to release the statistics, if at all, based on dates and times of when things are due. In this case here, I typically release the scores, the manual, and the solutions at a certain date. And I've selected that. And I'm going to show it to you here because, again, I have already prepared it. So the assignment is shown 5 days before available on. I do that because I have a lot of assignments and I don't want students to get overwhelmed by the amount of work that they need to do in the class. So I drip it in slowly. I can obviously change this to 1 day or however I want to go about doing it. I release the scores 12 hours after the due dates. I don't accept scores late. I do 12 hours. I release the solutions 12 hours after the due date. I release the statistics 12 hours after the due date. I release the statistics only in classes that have more than 50 students in the class. Otherwise, the statistics have less meaning, and students can even misinterpret the statistics when they don't follow proper Gaussian behaviors, and I just simplifies things. And this right here is just a simplified way, so I don't need to worry about when to release solutions, when to release scores, when to release problems, things like that. I just set this thing automatically, and it just basically tells me, for example, lecture 17 will be released tomorrow at 9 a.m. so students will know it exists. It will be opened up 5 days later, which is Monday, and then they have 2 days in order to solve the problem. And then after that date, I decide when the solutions and the scores and the statistics are released using the numbers I put in together. That's because this is just really painful in order to be able to manage individually because there are just too many assignments that I want to have control over. Anyways, that is what the auto release is set up for. The auto update revision will make more sense when I talk about assignments. It basically gives you the opportunity in order to update the questions that are in your assignments because the questions may be edited after you've used them. For example, if you use someone else's questions and they've edited it, you may not necessarily want to accept those questions in those updates of those questions in your course because you've already decided that it's fine and you don't want your students to get confused, things changing on the fly or things like that. Okay, I have only 5 minutes left, so I'm going to skip over a few of these things because they have more utility in the conversation around assignments. I will mention that you have the ability in order to, just like any LMS, identify the letter grades for what you're doing. This is only done at the end based on the performance metric that you've put down in terms of weights and things like that. What we do that we baked into our system is that we want to make sure that students have access to Z-scores. So if you're unfamiliar with Z-scores, it's the number of standard deviations you are as a student is away from the mean. So it's a mechanism for them to get an understanding about their performance compared to the performance of the students in class. Students already ask that when they ask for mean and standard deviations, but they don't actually typically have a quantitative way in order to be able to do that. And since I have good students, I feel it's worthwhile to teach them a metric that's actually useful rather than giving them a bunch of numbers and have them always ask the question about how their performance is in the class. That's a little bit more unique that's out there. There are a few other things that are of particular interest. Testing has to do with testing centers. You don't need to worry about that most of the time. We have analytics in the class. So if we want, we can keep track of the analytics. There's no data collected on this assignment. We update the analytics twice a day. That gives you lots of information that you would expect from learning analytics, performance, time on task, students that require intervention, and a few other things that are kind of do. It's actually pretty cool stuff. The grade book I already went over before, and while I end is with the reset course. The reset course is the nuclear option. If you click on the reset course, it will erase all student scores, all student enrollments, and it'll make the course as if it were completely empty, scratch. If you're into Ready Player One, this is the cataclysm that basically wipes everything clean and brings it together. We ask that instructors do that within 100 days after the course is over, because we don't want to be sitting on student data. While we have a lot of protections for student data, it's best if we don't have it at all, so we don't have any major risk connected to it. And we will then remind instructors every 30 days, I think, after the 100 days, to please reset their course. And then after 1 year, we will typically reset the course for them unless we have a special arrangement with the campus where they may want to save the scores at one point. You can always download the scores from the grade book so you can actually review it at a later date. This is just us not having access to instructor name, student names and performances and such like that, and just completely making it clear. So I'm going to end it with that, which is a relatively simple thing that we've done. We focused on making a new course and embedding a course, but we spent a lot more discussion around the course properties and how we want to be able to use it. And that will make more sense when we start actually putting assignments into the course and then moving forward that. But again, that was the point of this little 1-hour introduction. So I have a few minutes left. I'm happy in order to talk about any aspects that you may want to discuss around ADAPT. And feel free to leave at any time you want, if necessary. But I'm all open. So does anyone have any questions or concerns about this? Wayne asked a question that requires me to read. Let's see here. Automatic nearly everything. So okay. About course in Canvas now, yes.
Does that question make sense, Delmar?
I'm not sure what userland API. We do have APIs.
Userland means I can do it, not just you.
Yeah, an open API, an endpoint that you can tap into. Maybe it depends upon what you're talking about. And it wouldn't be open because we need to be, in probably most of the things that you want to do will require your permissioning, your authentication to come in. I'm open to it if you actually
Some of it is
propose.
just, like changing dates between a 6-week summer class and a 16-week fall class. That's a lot of click, even if it's the same content.
It is.
So I automate it.
We do have a
That's just an
process that
example.
we have a process that will shift it, shift the whole dates around. And to be honest, I'm trying to find out where that is. I don't get that. That shouldn't be too difficult in order to build APIs in order to control that. If you know the course ID number and you have authentication in order to access it,
Right,
that you can
right.
manipulate these things. No one has ever asked for that, but given your level of sophistication, I can understand why that might be useful for you because you may have a preference in order to hook that into some other um, timing infrastructure or something in order to be able to do that. If you give me a list of the things that you feel that you might be interested in, we can certainly put it on the list of the of endpoints that you can tap into.
Sure.
That should be reasonable. And most of the time we pull into the API of Canvas in order to do stuff. So what was introduced here that I didn't get a chance in order to give to Sarah, which was the way Canvas and Adapt play with each other. So you have two mechanisms in order to be able to communicate. One is LTI only, and the other one is using LTI plus the API that Canvas has. Um, and as you probably know, LTI is pretty restrictive in terms of what you can do with it. You can transfer only a limited amount of information. And the API gives us the ability so that you click a button and all these assignments are automatically created into Canvas and linked together appropriately to have the dates that are all synchronized with each other so you don't have any issues. So if you actually tweak it on one side, it will then automatically be reflected on the other. Uh, uh, but we haven't had anyone ask for access to the APIs in order to change these things. It wouldn't be too difficult to make. I mean, it'd probably be a handful of days, and it would be probably quite rewarding just from a playing perspective in order to be able to do something like that. So, okay, I think it's just you and Neil now, since time was left. Neil, do you have any questions?
Oh no, not really. Just hanging out,
Okay.
learning the system.
Okay. Um, that's fine. I may mention that the formative use is something like this question right here. So this is a course called Demo. It's a formative course. It has one assignment in it that's also formative. So if I were to give this link out to people, and I'm going to paste this into the chat, you can then access it anywhere without signing in. So it's a convenient way in order to showcase what you've created to people. We have a QR code that shows the same. Because this is so big, it has it's fairly dense QR code, but nonetheless, it holds the information that you have here, which is you can just pull this thing up and show it to people. So if you actually want to showcase what you've done, this is one mechanism in order to do that without having to worry about accessing it or getting a screenshot or something like that. And that has about um, 4 or 5 videos or four or five, six questions to deal with different things, whether it's an algorithmic Hess law question or it happens to be a MyOpenMath polar question, or in this case here, a um, um, related rates question in calculus, a very simple drag and drop question in H5P, simple numbers and web work, actually iMath AS, um, organic chemistry, if you want to be able to create a molecule in different ways. For example, I'm supposed to be drawing this thing and I click this thing and it's not going to give me the right answer because I didn't do it right. Or this, which is actually pretty cool, and this will take a moment to load up because it's a little bit of a hog, and this is the virtual dissection tool. And the intent of that is to provide an opportunity in order to allow instructors to be able to dissect and cut away things three-dimensionally. And Wayne, yes, there are accessibility issues associated with the drag and drop and this thing. And there's no solution in order to be able to handle that. While the drag and drop, you can reconstruct that into a series of multiple choice questions. The one that is a skull, which I don't have here because they didn't load it up, gives us the ability in order to dissect a skull in different ways and identify mandibles or things like that, or any other three-dimensional structure that's out there. So anything that requires spatial organization of things in order to be able to do that. For example, the Riverside Community College District wants to use this thing as a mechanism for dissecting out the computers. So you can actually show how you build a computer by saying, here's a power supply and here's the video card, and other than that, and get an idea about how computers are structured without having to have them play around with old computers or new computers, parts that will potentially break and require a significant amount of buy-in for that. There are lots of other examples where spatial orientation is important. And the background is useful for engagement, because if you can actually have a background that is, for example, connected to your own campus, you can do that, and then you start to get engagement because you're activating the geolocation identity of the student. So they're more interested in what you're doing here. Such. So anyways, there's a lot of other cool things that we're going to be releasing in the near future. And I'm hoping to have this thing all operational in principle this spring for anatomy and potentially for these other topics by the summer. So and yes, Wayne, H5P is exceedingly awful for accessibility purposes. The one thing that I may mention, and I skipped over it in these courses, is that we have the ability in order to have a alternative question. So that each question, you can have an H5P question and you can have multiple choice questions to reflect the H5P. So that the students that are not accessible, that don't require accessibility or alternatives, can do with the H5P that's not intrinsically accessible, but switch to the an alternative question that has the same informational content, but in a different format, oftentimes multiple choice, that can be made in an accessible manner. And that provides, again, the opportunity so that 99.9% of the students can still capitalize on the visual aspects, while the students that require an alternative can have access to that. And that was critical in the way that we constructed it, because we wanted to make sure that we addressed as much of universal design in the way we built this thing as possible. Okay, with that, unless there are any other questions, I can close this thing out.